Have you ever felt completely powerless when you needed help the most? Imagine walking into an emergency room, desperate for care, only to be turned away by the very person who is supposed to help you. What would you do in that moment? Would you fight back, or would you simply walk away, feeling defeated? This is the story of a young black boy who faced such a moment. He entered the hospital with pain in his chest, hoping for a doctor to ease his suffering. Instead, he was met with harsh words and dismissal. But his story doesn't end there. Picture this: a bustling emergency room filled with patients in need, doctors rushing around, and the sounds of beeping machines echoing in the background. In the midst of this chaos stands our main character, a young boy, barely 12 years old. He's frightened and in pain, clutching his side as he approaches the doctor's desk. He looks up at the doctor, eyes filled with hope, but instead of compassion, he encounters arrogance and disdain. The doctor, with an air of superiority, tells him to leave, saying his condition isn't serious enough for treatment. In that moment, the boy feels a rush of humiliation and anger. How could someone who took an oath to heal turn him away like this? Have you ever been dismissed when you needed support? Have you witnessed someone being treated unfairly? What happens when the system fails those who are vulnerable? These are not just questions. They are the heart of our story today. In this video, you will learn about a shocking incident that exposes the dark side of the medical system and the consequences of injustice. You'll discover how one young boy turned a moment of humiliation into an unexpected act of revenge. This isn't just a story of conflict. It's a journey of resilience and empowerment. Stick around until the end, because you won't want to miss the twist that changes everything. This isn't just about revenge. It's about standing up for yourself and finding your voice in a world that often silences the vulnerable. You'll see how courage can emerge from the most unexpected places. By the end of this video, you will have a deeper understanding of how important it is to fight against injustice, no matter how small or big it may seem. You'll find yourself rooting for the underdog, feeling their pain, and celebrating their triumphs. So, are you ready to dive into this incredible story? As Jamal walked away from the hospital, the sun shone brightly overhead, but he felt a shadow creeping in. His mother tried to comfort him, squeezing his hand, but words felt hollow after what had just happened. How could the doctor dismiss him so easily? Didn't he see the pain in Jamal's eyes? The world seemed brighter, yet everything felt wrong. Once they got home, Jamal retreated to his room. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. Images of the emergency room flashed through his thoughts: the bustling nurses, the indifferent doctor, and his mother's worried face. Jamal felt a storm brewing inside him, anger mixing with a sense of injustice that made his heart race. What could he do? He thought about how powerless he felt in that moment. But then, an idea began to take shape. Instead of succumbing to despair, what if he turned this situation into something more? He could make the doctor realize the impact of his actions. Jamal wanted justice, and he was determined to make sure that his voice would not be silenced. The next day, Jamal decided to gather evidence. He pulled out his phone and began to research. He learned about patient rights, the importance of compassionate care, and the systems in place to protect those in need. As he dug deeper, he discovered countless stories of people who had faced similar situations. Jamal felt a sense of camaraderie with them, as if they were all part of an invisible community fighting for respect and dignity. One afternoon, as he sat at his desk, an idea struck him like lightning. What if he documented his story? He could share his experience online and reach others who had faced medical discrimination. Inspired, he began to write. He poured his heart onto the pages, detailing his experience in the emergency room and how it made him feel invisible and dismissed. Each word carried the weight of his pain and frustration, but it also sparked something inside him, a fire that refused to go out. He spent days perfecting his story, adding details that would evoke emotion and show the raw truth of what he experienced. Jamal knew this was just the beginning. He wanted to ensure that others understood the importance of compassion in healthcare and that no one else would have to face what he did. As the days passed, Jamal's story began to take shape. He decided to create a video. He wanted to put a face to the words, to show the world who he was and what he had endured. With his phone propped up on a stack of books, he recorded himself, his heart pounding as he spoke. "Doctors are meant to help us, not turn us away," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through him. "I refuse to let this be the end of my story. I will make sure my voice is heard." After he finished recording, he felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it, the moment he would reclaim his power. He spent the next few days editing the video, adding text and images that illustrated his points. He wanted it to be impactful, something that would resonate with anyone who watched. Finally, the day arrived to upload his video. He took a deep breath, his finger hovering over the post button. This was a leap into the unknown, but he felt ready. With a click, his story was out in the world. He watched as the views began to climb, and the comments poured in. People shared their own stories of injustice and thanked him for speaking up. Jamal felt a wave of validation wash over him. But as the video gained traction, Jamal also received backlash. Some people questioned his credibility, while others defended the doctor's actions. The negativity stung, but it also fueled his resolve. If he was going to make a difference, he had to stand strong, despite the hate. He continued to engage with his audience, responding to comments and sharing updates on his journey. Each interaction reminded him of why he started this in the first place. He wasn't just seeking revenge. He was igniting a conversation about healthcare, compassion, and accountability. As days turned into weeks, the video reached an unexpected audience. Local news outlets began to pick up the story, sharing it on their platforms. Jamal felt like a spark had turned into a flame, and he was no longer alone in his fight. He had inspired others to share their experiences, and together, they formed a movement. But Jamal knew he wanted to take it one step further. He decided to organize a community meeting at a local center to discuss patient rights and advocate for change in the medical system. He envisioned a room full of people, all passionate about ensuring that no one would ever face the kind of injustice he did. As he prepared for the meeting, excitement mixed with nervousness. Would people show up? Would they listen? Jamal gathered his notes, determined to speak from the heart. He knew this was more than just about him. It was about creating a future where everyone felt valued and heard in their times of need. As Jamal's video continued to circulate online, it drew in viewers from all walks of life. Some were moved to tears, others were outraged, but many were inspired. Jamal watched the comments flood in, a mixture of support and criticism. While the supportive messages filled him with hope, the negative comments pierced his heart like arrows. Some people dismissed his experience as exaggerated, calling him an attention seeker. Others tried to silence him, insisting that he should be grateful for the care he received. Despite the hurtful words, Jamal refused to back down. He reminded himself why he started this journey. He thought of the other kids who might feel just as powerless as he did. He couldn't let them down. With every hateful comment, he felt a surge of determination. He needed to push through the noise, to make sure his voice was heard above the crowd. As the story spread, local news outlets reached out to Jamal. They wanted to interview him about his experience, to give him a platform to share his message with an even broader audience. At first, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. Would he be able to convey his feelings? Would people understand? With his mother by his side, he agreed to the interviews. When the camera lights flashed on, Jamal felt a rush of adrenaline. He talked about the day in the emergency room, sharing his emotions, his fears, and his journey to reclaim his voice. "I just want people to know that they deserve respect, no matter what," he said, his heart racing. The interviews aired, and the response was overwhelming. People from the community rallied behind him, some even sharing their own stories of similar experiences. With the growing support, Jamal realized that he could turn his anger into action. He organized a community meeting at the local community center, inviting people to come together and discuss the importance of compassion in healthcare. As the date approached, he felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. Would anyone show up? Would they listen? On the day of the meeting, Jamal arrived early, pacing the empty room as he set up chairs and prepared his notes. His heart pounded in his chest as he awaited the arrival of his neighbors and friends. Slowly, faces began to fill the room. Parents, teenagers, and even a few elderly folks. Jamal's breath caught in his throat as he saw the turnout. This was more than he had ever hoped for. Once everyone was seated, Jamal took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I wanted to talk about what happened to me in the hospital and how we can work together to make sure it doesn't happen again." He spoke passionately, sharing his story and encouraging others to share theirs. One by one, people opened up about their experiences in the healthcare system. Stories of being ignored, dismissed, or treated unfairly. Jamal listened intently, his heart aching for each person who spoke. He realized they were all connected by a common thread: the desire to be treated with dignity and respect. As the meeting progressed, Jamal felt a sense of camaraderie building in the room. They were no longer just individuals, they were a community standing together. Ideas flowed as they brainstormed ways to advocate for change. Someone suggested starting a petition, while another proposed holding workshops to educate people about their rights in healthcare. But amidst the unity, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He was grateful for the support, but he also knew there would be pushback. The healthcare system didn't always welcome criticism, especially from those who had been hurt by it. As the meeting wrapped up, he noticed a few individuals in the corner, whispering among themselves. A chill ran down his spine. Were they part of the system, watching him? After the meeting, Jamal received a message that sent a wave of anxiety through him. It was from a local reporter, asking if he had heard rumors about the doctor he had confronted. They were looking into a pattern of complaints against the same physician, a history of negligence that stretched back years. The doctor had a reputation for dismissing patients, especially those from marginalized communities. Jamal's heart raced. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about uncovering a deeper issue that affected many. Feeling a mixture of fear and resolve, Jamal decided he needed to take action. He contacted the reporter and shared everything he had learned from the meeting. Together, they began digging deeper, reaching out to others who had experienced similar treatment. Jamal wanted to shine a light on this injustice, to ensure that no one else would feel the way he did that day in the emergency room. As the investigation unfolded, more and more stories came to light. The doctor in question became a symbol of the systemic issues that existed in healthcare. Jamal's small act of courage had sparked a movement, bringing together individuals who were determined to fight for change. Yet, as the pressure mounted, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, the tension grew. Jamal began receiving anonymous messages urging him to stop speaking out. "You're just a kid," one message read. "You don't know what you're getting into." But the fear only fueled his determination. He realized that this fight was bigger than him. It was about every child who felt invisible, every person who had been mistreated. With each passing day, Jamal felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. His journey had begun as a personal fight for respect and dignity, but had quickly transformed into a community movement. He was no longer just a young boy who had been wronged. He was now a symbol of hope and change for many. But with this newfound purpose came unforeseen challenges that tested his resolve. After the meeting at the community center, Jamal and his supporters decided to organize a rally. They wanted to gather people from all over the neighborhood to raise awareness about the issues they faced in the healthcare system. As they planned the event, excitement buzzed in the air. But Jamal also felt a twinge of fear. What if nobody showed up? What if they faced backlash from the community or, worse, the hospital? The days leading up to the rally were filled with anticipation. Posters were made, social media pages were created, and flyers were distributed. Jamal spent hours with his friends, planning every detail, envisioning a powerful message that would resonate with those who felt voiceless. But amidst the excitement, he received another anonymous message. "You're making a mistake, Jamal. You don't know what you're messing with." It sent a chill down his spine. Who was behind the messages? What did they want from him? On the day of the rally, Jamal arrived at the park early, a knot of nerves tightening in his stomach. As he set up the stage, he glanced around, wondering if anyone would really come. But as the start time approached, he began to see familiar faces emerging from the crowd. One by one, people began to gather. Families with young children, teenagers, and even some elderly community members arrived, carrying signs that read, "We deserve respect," and "Health care for all." Jamal felt a wave of emotion wash over him. This was it. They were all here for a cause bigger than themselves. As Jamal took the stage, he looked out at the sea of faces filled with hope and determination. The energy was electric. He spoke from his heart, sharing his story, his pain, and his hope for a better future. We are not just statistics or numbers. We are real people with real stories. We deserve to be heard. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Jamal felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. But as the rally continued, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He noticed a small group of people standing at the edge of the crowd, their expressions unreadable. They seemed out of place, almost as if they were there to spy on him. His heart raced, but he forced himself to focus on the crowd in front of him. They needed him to stay strong. As he wrapped up his speech, he encouraged others to share their experiences. Voices began to rise, stories poured out, and the atmosphere became charged with passion. But amidst the powerful testimonies, Jamal noticed something troubling. The small group he had seen earlier was now moving closer, their eyes fixed on the stage. Panic surged through him. Were they here to disrupt the rally? Just as a woman was sharing her story about being mistreated in the hospital, the group broke through the crowd. Jamal's heart dropped. They began shouting, attempting to drown out her words. "This is a waste of time. You all are just looking for attention." The crowd fell silent for a moment, shock washing over them. Jamal could feel the tension crackling in the air. "Who are you?" Jamal shouted, stepping forward. "You don't understand what we're going through." But the group didn't back down. They shouted louder, trying to intimidate the crowd. Jamal felt a surge of anger. This was supposed to be a moment of unity, a chance to speak out against injustice. As the crowd began to murmur, Jamal took a deep breath and called out to them, "Don't let them silence us. Remember why we are here. We are stronger together." His words ignited a fire in the crowd. They began to chant, respect, equality, justice. The power of their voices drowned out the disruption, and slowly the small group retreated. Jamal felt relief wash over him, but his heart still raced. The rally continued, and as the event came to a close, Jamal felt a mix of triumph and exhaustion. He had faced the chaos head-on, and his community had stood with him. But as he packed up, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The fight for change wouldn't be easy, and the threat of opposition loomed large. After the rally, Jamal decided to take things further. He wanted to bring the community together not just for one event, but to create a lasting impact. He proposed forming a nonprofit organization focused on advocating for equitable healthcare access. The idea thrilled some, but others were hesitant. "Do you think we can really change anything?" one of his friends asked. Jamal looked them in the eye, determination burning within him. "If we don't try, nothing will change. We have to keep pushing." With a small team, they began to organize workshops and informational sessions, teaching the community about their rights and how to navigate the healthcare system. Jamal was passionate, but the stress of it all weighed heavily on him. He began to receive more threatening messages, warning him to stop his efforts. "You don't want to make enemies, Jamal," one read. The threats felt personal, and doubt crept into his mind. Were they right? Despite the fear, Jamal pressed on, channeling his anxiety into action. He didn't want to give up, not when so many people were depending on him. He knew that real change required courage, and he was determined to be that voice for the voiceless. With each workshop, he saw more and more people becoming engaged. Families began to speak out, sharing their stories of injustice and discrimination. But then, one night, as he returned home from a meeting, he noticed a car parked across the street, its headlights off. A sense of dread washed over him. Was it the same group that had disrupted the rally? His heart raced as he hurried inside, locking the door behind him. The threats were becoming all too real, and he knew he had to be cautious. As the weeks went by, Jamal faced more than just verbal threats. He heard whispers in the community, people who once supported him now doubting his intentions. Is he really doing this for us, or just for himself? The rumors cut deep, and Jamal felt the loneliness of leadership. The isolation began to weigh on him, but he had come too far to turn back now. He decided to reach out to the community once more, asking them to stand with him against the darkness closing in. He organized another meeting, this time in a larger venue. He wanted everyone to know that they were not alone, that together they could weather any storm. As the night of the meeting arrived, Jamal stood at the entrance, his heart pounding. Would they come? Would they still believe in the cause? As Jamal continued his mission, he realized that his efforts were beginning to create ripples throughout the community. The workshops and meetings had ignited a passion among his neighbors, who now started to share their stories openly. Each voice added to the growing chorus calling for change, but with every step forward, new challenges loomed. Jamal's phone buzzed incessantly with messages of support and encouragement, but it also brought a wave of negativity. Anonymous texts flooded in, threatening him and questioning his motives. "You're just a kid playing hero," one message read. "You don't know what you're getting into." Each time he read those words, his heart sank. The fear of retribution loomed over him like a dark cloud, but Jamal knew he couldn't let it deter him. Determined to push through the doubts, Jamal planned a community fair aimed at educating people about their healthcare rights. It was a bold idea, one that could potentially draw more attention than any of his previous efforts. He envisioned tents filled with information, food stalls, and even local musicians performing. It would be a day of unity and strength. He spent countless hours organizing, reaching out to local businesses for sponsorships, and gathering volunteers. But just as excitement began to build, the obstacles started to surface. A week before the fair, the local hospital's administration caught wind of Jamal's plans. They were not happy. One evening, as Jamal left a planning meeting, he noticed a car idling near his home. It was the same car he had seen before, its tinted windows hiding the occupants inside. An unsettling feeling crept over him. He quickened his pace, heart racing, as he hurried into his house. What did they want from him? As days passed, the threats became more brazen. Flyers began circulating in the neighborhood, attempting to discredit Jamal and his movement. They depicted him as an instigator, claiming he was trying to tear the community apart. "Don't let him fool you," the flyers screamed. "He's only in it for the attention." Jamal felt crushed. The very people he was trying to help were being turned against him. Despite the onslaught, Jamal refused to back down. He organized a community meeting to address the rumors, hoping to clear the air. As he stood before a room full of faces, some supportive, others skeptical, he felt the tension thick in the air. "I'm here for all of us," he said, voice steady yet passionate. "We need to stand together and show that we won't be silenced." But even as he spoke, he noticed a few individuals whispering amongst themselves, their eyes darting toward the back of the room where the flyers were stacked. The tension escalated, and Jamal could sense the divide growing. Some attendees began to voice their concerns, questioning his leadership and motives. "What if you're just stirring up trouble?" One woman asked, her voice shaky. "What will happen if the hospital retaliates?" Jamal felt the heat of the moment pressing down on him. "Change is never easy," he replied, his heart pounding. But if we don't stand up for ourselves, nothing will ever change. The crowd remained mixed, and Jamal could feel the fear radiating from those who worried about the consequences of their actions. The night of the community fair arrived, and Jamal stood nervously at the entrance, a mix of excitement and dread churning in his stomach. Would people come? Would they still believe in the cause after everything that had happened? As the sun began to set, families started arriving, bringing smiles and laughter that warmed Jamal's heart. The tents were filled with information, and food vendors served delicious treats. Music floated through the air, creating an atmosphere of hope. But as the crowd grew, so did Jamal's anxiety. He noticed a small group lingering near the entrance, whispering amongst themselves. The same individuals who had questioned him at the meeting were now watching, their expressions unreadable. Were they there to support him, or were they planning something? As Jamal welcomed everyone, he felt a surge of energy. People were sharing stories, exchanging information, and for a moment, it felt like they were all part of something bigger. But then, just as the atmosphere peaked, the small group made their move. They began shouting, trying to disrupt the event. "This is all a waste of time," one of them yelled. "You're just making things worse." Jamal's heart raced as the crowd turned to look. The laughter faded, replaced by murmurs of confusion. "Who are you to tell us what we need?" Jamal shouted back, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We are here to fight for our rights." The tension was palpable, and Jamal could see fear creeping into the eyes of his supporters. But just as the situation seemed to spiral out of control, a woman stepped forward from the crowd. "We're not afraid of you," she declared, her voice strong and unwavering. "We are here to support Jamal and our community." The crowd erupted in cheers, their unity pushing back against the negativity. Jamal felt a rush of pride as the community rallied behind him. The fair continued, but the threat of opposition lingered in the air. As he looked around at the faces of those who had come together, he knew that they were stronger than the doubts and fears that had plagued them. However, in the back of his mind, the threat remained. He couldn't shake the feeling that those who opposed him would not give up easily. Late at night, he began to receive more ominous messages. "You think you're a hero. You're just a boy playing with fire," one message read. Each time his phone buzzed, a chill raced down his spine. Jamal felt the pressure mounting. He had taken on a fight that seemed bigger than himself. The community looked to him for leadership, but the risk of retaliation from the hospital loomed larger than ever. Friends started advising him to lay low, to consider his safety. But Jamal couldn't abandon the fight. He had come too far and was determined to see it through. After the successful community fair, Jamal felt a surge of hope. The event had drawn in people from all walks of life, and it seemed to energize the entire neighborhood. For a moment, it felt like they had crossed a significant threshold, a united front against injustice. However, beneath the surface of this newfound unity, dark clouds were beginning to gather. Days turned into weeks, and while the community buzzed with excitement, Jamal found himself grappling with the repercussions of standing up against the hospital. He had expected some resistance, but nothing prepared him for the wave of intimidation that followed. One evening, as Jamal sat at his desk organizing the notes from the fair, he heard a knock at the door. It was his mother, her face etched with worry. "Jamal, we need to talk," she said, her voice heavy with concern. He could see the tension in her eyes, and it made his heart race. What had happened? "Is it about the fair?" he asked, anxiety creeping in. Did someone complain? His mind raced with possibilities. "No, it's worse," she replied, handing him a folded piece of paper. His hand shook slightly as he unfolded it. The note was anonymous, filled with threats and accusations. "You think you're a hero. You're just making things worse for our family. Stop before it's too late." Jamal felt his stomach drop. This was not just an attack on him, but a warning aimed at his family. The realization hit him like a cold wave. He had put his loved ones in danger. He looked up at his mother, who had always been his rock. "I'm sorry, Mom. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said, guilt flooding through him. "We'll figure it out," she replied, though her voice wavered. "But you have to be careful. They're watching you." Jamal nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew he couldn't turn back now, but he also understood the risks. The threats had escalated beyond words on a page. They were tangible, lingering in the shadows. As the weeks passed, the hospital began to ramp up its efforts to silence him. Rumors circulated, whispers turned into confrontations, and some community members started to distance themselves from him. "You're stirring up trouble," they said, echoing the words of the flyers. Jamal could feel the division growing. It was like a knife cutting through the unity they had just built. Feeling isolated, he decided to meet with a few close friends who had supported him from the start. They gathered at their usual spot, a small park where they had shared countless laughs and dreams. "We can't let this stop us," Jamal urged, trying to rally their spirits. "We've come too far. People need to know the truth." But as they discussed their next steps, doubt crept into the conversation. "What if they come after us?" one friend asked, worry etched on his face. "We're just kids. What can we do against an entire hospital?" Jamal could see the fear in their eyes, and it troubled him. They were fighting for a cause greater than themselves, yet the threat of retaliation was real. He felt a surge of determination. "We need to keep pushing. If we don't, we're letting them win. Our voices matter." But even as he spoke those words, Jamal was acutely aware of the fear that lingered around them. Each day brought new challenges, and he felt the pressure mounting. He decided to reach out to local news outlets, hoping to shine a light on the injustices they were facing. Perhaps if more people knew their story, they could build a wider network of support. One afternoon, after much effort, he secured a meeting with a reporter. Jamal felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he prepared to share his story. This could change everything, he thought, envisioning a world where others stood beside him, fighting against the injustices he had faced. But just as he was about to meet the reporter, he received a chilling message. "You think you're brave. Keep pushing, and you'll regret it." The words sent shivers down his spine. Who was behind this? Was it the hospital, or was it someone else? Despite the fear, Jamal decided to go ahead with the meeting. He needed to speak out. It was the only way to honor those who had supported him. As he sat across from the reporter, he recounted his experiences, emphasizing the need for change in their community. The reporter listened intently, scribbling notes and nodding. "This is powerful stuff, Jamal. Your story could resonate with so many," she said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. But as she leaned closer, her tone shifted. "But you have to be careful. The hospital is not going to take this lightly." Jamal nodded, fully aware of the risks involved. As he left the meeting, he felt a mix of hope and fear. The article could bring awareness to their cause, but it could also provoke a more intense backlash. In the following days, he anxiously awaited the article's release, constantly checking his phone. When the day finally came, his heart raced with anticipation. As he opened the news app, he saw the headline: "Young Activist Challenges Local Hospital, a Community in Turmoil." The article detailed Jamal's experiences and highlighted the threats he had received. It portrayed him as a courageous figure standing against the odds. But with each word, he also felt the weight of what it could mean. As the article circulated, the responses were overwhelming. Many in the community expressed their support, while others criticized him for causing trouble. The hospital quickly issued a statement, claiming Jamal was misrepresenting the situation. "We are committed to providing the best care for all our patients," the statement read. Jamal's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Some messages filled him with joy, while others left him shaken. "You're just a kid," one read. "Stay in your lane." Despite the mixed reactions, Jamal knew he had ignited a conversation that couldn't be extinguished. But as he celebrated the initial victory, he felt a foreboding sense of unease. Would this lead to greater backlash? Would the threats become more serious? He looked around at the faces of those who had stood by him. Each one reflected a blend of admiration and concern. They had fought for their voices to be heard, but now the stakes had risen significantly.